It is my pleasure to welcome you to Passion Pivots, where we explore the key decision-making moments our guests have as they explore their lifestyle, entrepreneurial, and adventure dreams. My name is Scott Armstrong, and I have the exciting job to be your host, conductor, and provocateur for today's journey. Before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsor, Adventure 50, who've been helping those 40 plus find their incredible life adventures since 2012. Today, I am very thrilled to have a guest who's on the other side of the country from me. Her name is Diane Lidstone. Diana, we're going to find, it's Diane, is that correct?
Diane, like my husband says, like the princess.
Okay. The Princess Diana is with us today, and she is the creator of the Entrepreneurial GPS. She is a lifestyle entrepreneur. She is a coach. She is an author of Shift to Rich, a mother and a wife, and I have a feeling a few other gold nuggets that we're going to discover along our way today. So Diana, more than welcome to Passion Pivots.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
So Diana's been involved in the entrepreneurial world for some time, and now she's coaching and helping businesses and lifestyle entrepreneurs, which is really an awful lot of what I do. So this is cool for me. So I'm actually taking notes. Don't tell her that, but I'm taking notes to see what else I can do to actually make my clients' lives more agreeable. But Diana, you've been an entrepreneur a good chunk of your life. You started out. Can you tell us where that entrepreneurial DNA came from?
Geez, I'm not really sure where it came from, but I guess, I went to university, took a degree in geography, went out in the world and went, that's not going to do much good. This is back in the mid-'70s, and eventually went back to school to become an admin assistant. And so for a very short time, I worked as a support staff to corporate executives. And I was a little outspoken, I guess. One of my core values is truth, and I tend to speak my truth without a filter sometimes.
And how did that play in the corporate environment?
Yeah, the corporate environment just wasn't for me. My husband got transferred a few times, and I thought, well, maybe I'll start my own business. And so, back in the early 80s, my son was born. And at that time we were living in Montreal. We had just moved back from Halifax, and my French was not up to par for the market. And so I thought, well, I have a skill. And I started, I guess you could call it a typing service. And this was before the days of virtual. Mm-hmm. And so it became a service for, sales reps, that kind of thing that worked from home. And I went out and bought, you have to think back to the 80s now, mm-hmm. when they came out with their first home computers that weighed, 10 pounds. Printer probably weighed 50 pounds or more. So the printer and the computer and the software cost me over $5,000. And I went, oh my God, that was a big number back then. But turned it into a great little business. My husband moved, and I thought, okay, I could do this one more time. And
so before you get to that next one here, this is the genesis that I love. And you're speaking to our audience because a lot of us grew up in the 70s and 80s. So we remember the bricks, the $5,000 bricks with the 20 megabyte hard drives, right? All those kinds of things. That's part of what our audience is in Passion Pivots. But you had to go out and sell. You were an admin assistant who specialized in geography, and unless I forget about drumlins and all those kinds of beautiful that are on there, where did that? How were you able to proceed over that hurdle of fear of going out and selling? Because that's what stops a lot of people in their tracks.
Yeah, I think I knew deep down that I was really good at organizing, and I think maybe that's where it came from. And I knew that there were other people doing something like what I did, similar. And I didn't have a fear of selling back then. I don't know, maybe I was just young and innocent, but here I am. I put ads back then. We put ads in newspapers and that sort of thing. And that's how I kind of grew my business. But
And how
when I
long did you
look
run it?
back, yeah.
How long did you run your business?
Let's see. I think I ran in Montreal or in the suburbs of Montreal. It was a couple of years. Then we got transferred to Halifax. I ran it there for, let me go, 5 years
Okay.
there. So by then, computers were changing, certainly. And so, I went from Montreal to Halifax, had it in Halifax. And when we came back to Montreal, my husband was transferred again. By this time, I had 2 children. And my husband was really climbing the corporate ladder. And he always said, the higher up you are on the ladder, the closer you are to the door.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of looked at, what would I do for a business again? And we decided that maybe something that the family could get involved in would be more appropriate as opposed to just something that I could do.
And you went into a retail Vermont style store, is that correct?
Yes.
I like the Vermont
I think
style.
back, I went, I was kind of crazy because I had never worked in retail.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about retail, but I had some friends who had started a retail business, and I went, well, they did it, so I guess I could do it.
So,
And
you're just laying bait for me all across here, and I have to go hunting. And the hunting is, you've got confidence. This has nothing to do with organization. This is, I can figure this out. So
Yeah.
DNA question again, where did that come from, or how did you nurture that? Or has it always been you?
I guess it's, and it's interesting that you say confidence because I never looked at it as confidence. When I started my retail store, I had this core belief, and I guess you could call it confidence, that it would be a success. There was no doubt in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I didn't know the how.
And you had
right?
two kids too, didn't you? So we're not just talking about a retired project, sort of a passion part-time business. You're doing a full-time business with 2 young kids, and I understand one of your children was ill for quite some time. You have a husband who's climbing the ladder, and yet you have no doubt that this is going to be successful.
Yeah.
I love
it. When we started the store in 1995, my husband was the one with the business background. So, I did have my 2 feet solidly on the ground that way. But yeah, 2 young kids, a husband who was in corporate business. We bought our own building, figured out that, we needed at that time, we were probably one of the first stores in, I wouldn't say Quebec, but certainly we were a standalone store. So we weren't part of a chain, but we put in our first point of sale system. So, the computer systems that you see in all the stores today. Mm-hmm. Well, that was almost unheard of for a standalone small business. And, we put that in, and 12 years later, it was a roaring success.
And what was the passion behind doing the retail piece? Is it just something that you saw dollars at the end, that this was a good chance to make some money, or was there a specific interest in it?
I think it came from the fact that we thought that the whole family could get involved. And so what I mean there was that, the kids as they were growing up. So, my son, his responsibility was to mow the lawn in the summer. So he got paid for that. Just before Christmas, when we had all this inventory, I would bring these boxes of inventory home, and the kids would help me with the pricing. and, putting pricing stickers on everything.
Mm-hmm.
We also knew that if my husband got laid off, it was a business that, could support us as a family.
Yeah. Very nice, well-rounded piece. So you went into retail for a while, which retail, by the way, is one of the highest mortality of small business, and with a lot of costs that go with it, because there tends to be a lot of overhead costs, of all that. And you've moved on to, Entrepreneur GPS. Tell me a little bit about what I want. I do want to find out about Entrepreneur GPS, but I want to find out, how do you go from retail environment to, I think I can help others start their businesses?
Yeah, that was a slower process, to be quite honest, because after I finished my retail store, after we sold the building, I had this idea in my head that I could take part of my retail store and actually put it online.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not knowing what it would take. But finally, by the time we closed down the store and that sort of thing, and when I got home, I realized that I was burnt out. Yeah. I was fried. Yeah. As a result of not only the retail store, but all the personal things that were going on that you alluded to. Mm-hmm. Family members being sick and dying, and my daughter bedridden for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And, she's well now, but it takes a toll. Yeah. And so it took me at least 2 years to recover from that. Mm-hmm. And I tell a funny little story about one day my daughter came home. This is when she's, well now. And, during that 2 years, I had time to clean every closet in the house that hadn't been cleaned for 12 years. Get things all reorganized. So she comes home one day and she opens the cupboard where the tea and the coffee were. And if you can imagine, she stands there, she opens the cupboard and she's silent. And she looks at the cupboard and then she looks at me and she looks at the cupboard and she looks at me and she goes, "Mom, really?" And I go, "What?" She says, "Look at the cupboard." And I go, "What?" Well, the cupboard was all organized as if it was a retail display. It was everything was color coordinated and stacked. And anyway,
you got to come over to my place.
She goes, "Mom, it's time for you to get out there and do something else."
And so can you give me an idea, Diana? You've given us when you went to university, when you started, so we can calculate your age, but can you give us the age range when you're making this pivot here? Because it's really important to our audience here. Or maybe our audience isn't all that mathematically inclined, and they might have a tough time with that. So.
I would say so. So I'll just, I took time off. I then worked for a financial advisor part-time for a couple of years. I did some dabbling in some network marketing. And then about the age of 59, a friend of mine said, "Diana, you've grown several businesses and made them very successful. Why don't you help other people grow their business?" And I kind of went, "You mean people would pay me for that?" Yeah. And so hence the Entrepreneur's GPS was born.
So let me ask this again, because you're baiting me. You are the classic, person. You're just putting fodder in the water. You're 59. You've got a husband who's successful in the corporate world. You may or may not have to work. And a lot of people, say, well, at 59, gosh, I'm 4 years into taking my reduced pension. Why would I bother, taking on a new position with responsibility and stress and, my gosh, growth? Why would I do that? Why did you do that?
It's just what fires me up, I guess.
Yeah.
And one of the things that had happened was during the time I had my retail store, I saw so many entrepreneurs try to start businesses and fail. Mm-hmm. And I went, it doesn't have to be like that. I mean, it's not, I hate to say it, but it's not rocket science. Mm-hmm. But I guess I had some very practical steps I didn't realize at the time. And so I tell people now, really what inspires me, what motivates me is that there are so many, especially women, starting mm-hmm. businesses today, and the success rate is so low. I believe StatsCan has this figure that I often quote. Only 3% of self-employed men or women earn over $100,000 a year.
Mhm.
And 79% of self-employed people earn less than $22,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, really?
Okay, no.
Yeah, it's staggering.
Yeah.
And so I want to help them.
No, I hear you, and that's what Passion Pivots is about: is getting people from have to work to want to work, and to do something that as you say, fires you up and gets you going.
Yep.
And here's the question that I find a lot of folks. I'm 56, so in the same ballpark range wise. And I talk to a lot of friends who are retiring, and they're going, you know what? I've put in my time. I don't have to work. And I approach it that life has a limited shelf life, to use your retail analogy, and that there's a lot of adventure and excitement to still be had. That to do nothing is sort of like telling your mind to tell your body it's all over. Let's just sort of wind it down. How do you? I want to ask how you motivate the people that you work with. What are some of their prime motivations to start their own businesses? Almost regardless of age, but if you could comment specifically on ones who might be in that 45 plus range.
So I have to, most of the entrepreneurs that I work with actually are younger.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women entrepreneurs, a lot in the wellness industry, so coaches, a lot of consultants. And for them, a lot of them, it is financial.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's also this component that they want to help people. And what drives them and moves them forward every day is that they want to help people, and I was just talking to a group earlier. They have this idea in their mind of the lifestyle that they want to live,
Mm-hmm.
and what I try to teach them is how to build a business that will enable that lifestyle.
Okay.
So the business fits into the lifestyle as opposed to the other way around. And, I think gone are the days of, like my father, and his father before him retiring at 60 or 65 with the gold watch because you've been with the company for 20 odd years. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's unheard of today. So at 60 or 65, we're still young, Scott.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, there's still a lot of a life to live. I have a mother-in-law who's 88, lives on her own, still drives, etc. Well, if she had retired at 60, what would she be doing?
Yes.
No?
Yeah. And that's where I see a gap, that you can fill in with the GPS entrepreneurs, helping folks who are in that age range and older say it's a lifestyle entrepreneurship that you can do now. It's not a 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 days a week with headaches and cash flow and tons of employee issues, all that kind of stuff. You can craft it, right, to your image. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, exactly. Like, these people have a wealth of information,
Mm-hmm.
of knowledge, of whatever it happens to be. Well, they can turn that wisdom, as I call it, into wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And work on their own terms.
Yes. I know, and you and I are both doing that. I know yesterday I was doing a workshop for the insurance brokers across North America, webinar. And, I'm not traveling anywhere to do that. I'm sitting right now where I'm sitting with you. And at the end of it, you make an offer, you've got an online course, and you go to your PayPal account and watch cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And, if I managed to put on my dress pants underneath my dress shirt, then it was a busy day. Kind of, right? And I will edit that out, I promise. But the lifestyle piece is so important. But how important do you think it is to stay active in your mind with new growth and challenges as age goes on? Do you see that being important?
Oh, I think it's everything. I think it's what keeps you young. and young of mind, young of body, young of everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, because if you relinquish and decide you're going to sit in the rocking chair, you're going to become old very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to stay active. And there is a whole component of about giving back.
Mm-hmm.
When I had my retail store, there was an older gentleman who had a retail store across from me that was very, very successful. And he was my first mentor. And he would, he spent hours with me sharing his wealth of information, for no cost.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many people today who have a wealth of information that they could be sharing and giving back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's huge.
And that's something that you still do find it occasionally in the 20 and 30 something range, but usually at that range, they've got a lot of their own financial things they've got to get squared away. And 50s, 60s, and 70s, there's a little bit of a shift towards a contribution to community.
Yeah.
Do you find, and maybe you've already answered this, so I apologize if I'm asking the same question. Do you find folks looking for social sort of entrepreneurship? You talked about coaching and relationship, but where people can actually help others that they just feel really passionate about. And the money's nice, but it's not necessarily the big driver, or not the only driver.
Yeah, no, I think it's not the only driver. Especially, I coach, predominantly women. And I think that's certainly true for women coming from that nurturing background. They want to help other people. They want to make sure that other people aren't suffering, whatever that happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to make an impact, for sure.
Fair enough. And when you coaching women, I've interviewed a few other, lots of other folks, and a lot of female. They talk about this feminine versus masculine energy when it comes to creating a business. And specifically, what I've heard it to mean, and I don't pretend to be the expert, so we can chuckle about this as I misinterpret it. But the masculine energy is, I'm at A, I want to go to B. At B, I reverse engineer the steps all the way back to A to get there. That's where the feminine energy is more along the lines. I feel this, and I'm going to explore this over here, and it's much more organic and less process driven. You strike me, at least in your comments, that organization is a big thing for you. So I have to think that there's some of that, masculine energy going as well. That you have a plan and a process for doing things. How do you find mixing those kinds of different energy for folks who may be coming from a more organic place?
Interesting, because I have a client who she has a business. It's called For Love and Business. Mm-hmm. And she talks about her ideal client is a woman who's in partnership or works with their husband in business. So she often talks about this female-male energy. And you're right, I'm a very strategic person. And over the years, I have had to, I wouldn't say, I've had to encourage my more organic, intuitive side. But what is interesting is that, how can I say this? We are who we are, and not everybody is a perfect fit to work with each one of us, as and more so when we're dealing with one-on-one coaching, as opposed to, you who are talking to corporate levels and that sort of thing. But there have been people who have fired me because we're not a good fit to work together. Mm-hmm. And I go, perfect. I was feeling the energy drain. So let's do ourselves both a favor and let's move in different directions. But sometimes also there is the fact that opposites will attract. And somebody may recognize that they need a more strategic approach. So then I might be a good fit there.
Fair enough.
Does that answer your question?
No, it absolutely does. And there was no definitive answer. It's just I wanted to make sure that I wasn't on my own satellite planet, just orbiting myself, and nobody saw the difference going here. Because I'm like you. I'm very process driven and strategic in what I do, and I find sometimes, particularly with lifestyle entrepreneurship, because it's not about the first million in the next 12 months. It's a combination of drivers, and that there's a more passion and feeling aspect to the business, and
Right.
and serving a community, if you will. So that's a good answer. So let's take our avatar person now, somebody 50 to 60 years of age. They've got a lot of rubber on them from their careers. They've exhausted, burnout, as you alluded to, and I've been burned out too, and made silly decisions because I was burned out or not taking a look at other opportunities. What advice would you provide somebody who's in that sort of headspace and going, man, I just can't wait to retire. I'm tired of responsibility for others. I'm done. And as you say, we could be living another 30, 40 years. What kind of advice would you offer them?
Good question. Good question. Maybe the same advice that I give those people who come to me and they have a career already, but they're not happy with the career. So one of the things that they certainly can do is start what I call a side hustle.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And start working and creating this business on the side. Because I think it gives certainly people who are unhappy in their career, it gives them an added boost, gives them some inspiration, something to look forward to. And I certainly think that could fit with the avatar of those people who are about to retire. Mm-hmm. Start exploring what kinds of things you would like to do. What is the, what kind of superpower or what kind of brilliance or genius or wisdom do you have that people would pay for? And you would be surprised what they would pay for.
And that is the truth, isn't it? That you would be surprised for that. When I was working at a university here as the director of corporate training, and I knew that this was not, I was suffering from what you were talking about, just career malaise. I was accepting mediocrity. So I took a 2.5-year runway to build up the outside side hustle. And so I think that's really good advice, is that you don't have to cold turkey cut it off and then go, what do I do now? You need to actually give yourself a little bit of a break. When you're thinking about the entrepreneurial realm, we'll talk a little bit more about the business piece. You strike me as someone who has a lot of energy. I hear it in your voice, and I know you may be up and down, but what do you do to take care of your engine, to make sure you've got the right attitude and energy levels to handle the things that entrepreneurship throws at you?
I think there's a couple of things that I do. I would say one of the first things is in the morning, I make sure that I do some, what can we label it? Personal development, personal growth work. Mm-hmm. Whether that's reading an inspiring book, whether that is, looking inwards and what blocks are keeping me from moving forward. But certainly that is something that I do pretty much on a regular basis. And the other thing is, I think people have to figure out where they derive their energy from. And I've learned that I derive my energy by being with other people. Mm-hmm. So, like yesterday, I was asked to speak at a small networking group. So I went, and just being surrounded by people who ask really cool questions and that sort of thing, that's what helps me bring my energy up. And so I know that I have to schedule these things into my work month, if you will, or into my work schedule, so that I can, I feed off of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and people are very much that's the danger of being a solopreneur, isn't it?
Yeah. Isolation can be the killer of entrepreneurship.
I try very hard, even with all this technology, even though I could stay home 5 days a week or work from home office, I try to get out at least 3 days a week. Is your number similar or higher or lower?
I probably I would say 1 day a week. I live kind of remotely.
Okay.
I'm an hour away from Kingston, for instance.
Hmm.
I'm an hour and a bit away from Ottawa. I'm 2 hours away from Montreal. So I would say probably 1 day a week.
Hmm.
Um, but I try to get out and be in the presence of real people. I mean, I don't mean that you're not real, but physically.
Cyber insult noted here. It's all good.
Yeah. And I mean, today there's I even belong to a virtual networking group,
Yes.
but you need to get out and out from behind your computer. You need to get dressed and put on some real clothes and go out and meet people in the real world. So,
Fair enough. Thank you for that. Um, so we have our avatar again, and they're contemplating things of their passion pivot and what it could be. Um, this is a hard question, so feel free to tap dance around it like the politicians who are a couple hours north of you do every day. Um, what is the most important for you aspect if someone's considering an entrepreneurial passion pivot? What has to be in line first? It's not the only thing. We know there's lots of things, but what has to be in line first for them to have a stronger chance of success?
ooh. Um, well, I think, you talk a little bit about it. Passion has to be there. Um, and passion, people can describe passion in many ways, but I think there has to be that fire in your belly, if
Mhm.
you can say that, because entrepreneurship is not the easiest road or the easiest path to follow. And it's easy to get discouraged, but what is going to keep you going? And, I say, passion, persistence, commitment, discipline. Um, if you want to make it a success, then
Mhm.
it requires all of those things together. Um,
Where would vision fit in? So having that 2 or 3 year piece out. Because again,
yeah.
that's the masculine energy. We have the vision. The other, is the more organic, which might be a little more flexy.
No, I think vision is huge. And I've just done my own pivot, if you will,
Hmm.
although I use the word shift,
Hmm.
um, because I have always felt that having a vision for your business 3 to 5 years out was very, very important.
Hmm.
And I've just done a bit of a shift. And I think a vision for the lifestyle that you want to create is even more important.
Yes.
Um, and what is it that you feel you could commit to? So people who are, like you say, your avatar, well, yeah, maybe they don't want to work 5 days a week. Well, how many days a week do you want to work? Do you want to take winters and go south? Do you want to do a lot of traveling? All of these elements of a vision for that lifestyle are going to affect the model or how you grow your business.
Hmm.
So I think that is hugely important, hugely important.
Fair enough. Tell me a little bit about your book, Shift into Rich.
Yeah, well, there's kind of a funny story to that. I had an idea for a book, and this kind of stewing, I think, like a lot of people do, they have an idea for a book. Um, and originally, it was going to be a book about how my daughter's illness affected the um, way I look at life. Um, and then I, hired a coach, and the question was, well, what will that book do for your business? And I went, I don't know. And then so I let it, stew for a while, and I finally one day it sort of came to me that a lot of books are written about how to make business successful, but I hadn't come across many books that kind of lay it out there that the road to success is not that it's not that smoothly paved. So what are the roadblocks that you might encounter? And so that was the angle that I took. And I actually went away on, it was a boating holiday, middle of August, came home and made a decision that I would write my book and have a printed author's copy or whatever you want to call it in my hand by November. Mm-hmm. Because by November I was hosting my own live events. Mm-hmm. So I hired a coach. I wrote a book in a month or two, and by November I had an author's copy in my hand that I pre-sold at my live events.
By the way, just for the audience, that this is an example of masculine energy, goal, time frame, very tight, overly ambitious, achieve.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, I'm a doer.
I tip my hat to you. That's very cool. If folks want to get in touch with you, Diana, and I do, because I just sense this whole wealth of perspective and knowledge that you're bringing that is not ethereal, but is streetwise. How can they reach you and how can they work with you?
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking. So my website is simply my name, dianalidstone.com. My emails are diana@dianalidstone.com. Mm-hmm. And they can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn, Diana Lidstone, the Entrepreneur's GPS. I like to keep things pretty simple.
Yeah. Sounds like it's working for you.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us on this one. And Diana is not only one who's made her own passion pivot, but she's now reaching out to help others make theirs, which makes you a double gold star guest on today's episode.
Oh, thank you. So much fun.
It is. You are awesome to talk to. I just want to thank Diana very much for joining us today. I'm going to be reaching out to her with some questions that I have, because she has a perspective that is just well honed and fairly unique in all the folks that I've talked to. So Diana, thank you so much for joining us today on Passion Pivots.
Thank you, Scott. My pleasure.
Cheers.